Tonight, on The Wrap, the government U-turns again. Dire warnings of job losses and closures prompt the Chancellor to unpick her plans to hike business rates for pubs and music venues. But critics say it's not enough and question why there's no help for hotels and restaurants.
From utility bills, from food inflation, all of those sort of things affect the hospitality industry across the board, so it's not just pubs. So there will be calls across the industry for much more support coming from government.
Donald Trump is about to address the MAGA faithful in Iowa as Joe Biden adds to the pressure over the killing of civilians by anti-immigration officers in Minneapolis. The president bends a little in the face of the growing backlash, saying he is going to de-escalate a little bit. Has he badly underestimated the mood in America? Plus,
it is simply untrue to say that I was told that I would be blocked.
Labour's rift grows as Andy Burnham hits out that claims the party warned him that he'd be blocked from returning to Parliament. So was the Prime Minister wise to stand in the way of the man that many within Labour now think should replace him as leader? Plus, cars submerged, homes damaged and schools closed as Storm Chandra blows into the UK and leaves chaos in her wake. We discuss the day's biggest stories with Sonia Soda and Matthew Paris, plus a first look at the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers, including reports that the US may still be insisting on Ukraine ceding territory to Russia. Well, good evening to you. Good evening to both of you as well. So, hello. Matthew, Sonia, another government U-turn.
Yes, we've had rumours of this for some time. The pubs were facing huge increases in the business rates they pay, and the government has cut those somewhat.
Sonia?
I think it was inevitable. As soon as you had pubs come out the day after the budget saying this is going to hit us in a way that the government hasn't foreseen, it was inevitable that you were going to see Rachel Reeves soften the blow. But as your report hinted at, the question will be, why not restaurants and hotels?
Indeed so. So the Chancellor forced to act after pubs warned that her plans to remove COVID-era support would lead to widespread closures and the loss of thousands of jobs. Rachel Reeves now says that pubs will get 15% off their new business rates, with bills then be frozen for 2 years. But not everyone is impressed. Sky's Paul Kelso has been speaking to the Chancellor at a pub in South East London. Have a look at this.
Publican here, pretty pleased with this news, perhaps not least because the Chancellor herself was here talking up what is undeniably a rewriting of the budget, another U-turn. I'll leave it to others to add up how many of those there have been. I can tell you about what the impact on rates has been. The Chancellor made a big deal in her budget that she was cutting business rates. She said that would benefit businesses of all kind, benefit the hospitality sector in particular, because she was cutting rates most of all for pubs, hotels and restaurants. Unfortunately, while the rate was going down, the bills pubs were paying and other business was going up. That's because there's a few things that go into rates. The value on which those rates are based. All pubs, all businesses in the country have been revalued for the first time in 3 years. Pubs, on average, their valuations are up 30%, so you might be paying less tax, but you're paying on a higher number, so it goes up. There's also 40% rates relief that was a COVID-era measure. That was being withdrawn. So pubs, when they did the sums, looked at this, and while there was some more relief coming from the government, they said, we are being hammered here. There has been a pretty effective campaign. Labour MPs, including the Chancellor, have been barred from their locals. So today, a climb down. There's a 15% relief, 15% cut to this year's bill, which will then be frozen for 2 years, not just for pubs, but for music venues. And the Chancellor, when I spoke to her, defended the decision to change policy and set out why she'd done it. Let's hear from her.
We had to increase taxes at the budget to be able to afford the public services in a world that has changed, where there are more threats, there is more pressure on defence budgets. There is an increasing need to build our security and resilience at home, whilst at the same time turbulence that is causing uncertainty around trade. So we did have to raise money. We listen, though, when people raise concerns, and we look at the detail of that and try to make sure we get it right.
Many pubs are going to be better off, or at least no worse off, as a result of this change. There's a signal here that there might be some relief coming for the hotel trade, which is still facing steep increases. We wait and see if this is the last rewriting of that budget.
Paul Kelso there. Well, John Craig's joined us. Matthew, let's go to you first of all. I mean, this is a U-turn, but one that, quite frankly, does not touch the sides for pubs, let alone the rest of the hospitality industry.
Yes, I think the industry was expecting a U-turn for pubs, but a more screeching U-turn than this one, and it still leaves pubs short-changed. It also brings with it problems, I think. Pubs have a kind of licence different from what restaurants have, but the distinction between the two is very porous and has always been a cause of litigation. So, I mean, is Wetherspoons a restaurant or a pub?
Yes, I mean, that is a very good point. But in terms of the pubs being picked out here, Rachel Reeves herself said that pubs are different because they're a community asset. Does that help the rest of the industry?
Well, I think if you're a restaurant owner in a small town or a village tonight, you might be feeling a bit hard done by if this business rates increase is going to affect you too. So, I said earlier, I think it was inevitable that there was going to be some softening. We mustn't forget that this comes at a really difficult time for the hospitality industry. There was a lot of suffering during COVID, and then they were hit by the national insurance increase in terms of employer contributions. Now, in a sector where margins are so low, there were already pubs, restaurants, other businesses in hospitality saying this tax rise enough is to, really put us at existential risk. Then you've got the rates rise. So, I mean, it was inevitable it had to happen because ultimately Labour cannot have lots of pubs closing on its watch. And it's very interesting. I think it's the Metro that is reporting tonight that as this news drops, Revolution bars are going to be closing 21 of their venues across the UK. That's 600 jobs in the hospitality sector. Now, some people may say, well, that's not that many, but it's going to be a lot to the people who lose those jobs. And if it's a sign of more things to come, it's very tricky for the government.
Yeah, John, I mean, set this in context. There was a big backlash after the budget, wasn't there? What was it, about 1,000 pubs banning Labour MPs from going into the... 800, OK. So why another U-turn on this, and how embarrassing does it get if there's a U-turn consistently with this government?
I never knew that Matthew was a spoons drinker. But the reason there was a U-turn, like so many of these government U-turns, and I think this is number 13 or 14, I've lost count now.
It was a dirty dozen recently, I seem to remember.
Yes, but we're past that now. Because there were a lot of Labour MPs were threatening to rebel on the finance bill because there was going to be an amendment put down, and who knows how many... I interviewed a few Labour MPs who said they were prepared to vote for it. So, yet again, the government has caved into pressure from backbenchers. Now, I sat through an hour and a half of... statements and questions from MPs in the Commons. It was Dan Tomlinson, the Junior Treasury Minister. The consensus was... it's a start, but it's not enough. Mel Stride, the Shadow Chancellor, as you might expect, said, is that it? Too little, too late, he said. And there was, as we've been discussing, there's this confusion, isn't there, between pubs that have bands on and music venues and so on, and the distinction between a pub that serves food, a gastro pub, and a restaurant and so on. It is confusing. I think there's probably still a lot of work for the government to do. But you're right, the Chancellor, when she spoke at Davos last week, Davos of all places, not sure what the pubs are like there.
Did you talk about spoons at Davos?
No, probably. I bet there's not a spoons there. She said the situation pubs face is different from other parts of the hospitality sector. Now, some people would challenge that.
Yeah, OK, very interesting. John, thank you. Well, is that all? As we mentioned, hotels, restaurants are not included in this U-turn. And the Michelin-starred chef and pub owner, Tom Kerridge, spoke to the Politics Hub programme a little earlier and said it does not go far enough.
Whilst we welcome the conversation and the fact that the government have paid some form of attention and listened and has done a U-turn for pubs, there is still a business rates increase. We were looking for something that helps the industry. There's still an increase, although nowhere near as big as it was going to be. But the hospitality sector is a bigger picture, is the one that's suffering. And we talk about this pub is relatively busy this evening, but it is people that are eating and drinking. It operates very similar to a restaurant. Restaurants have the same cost issues that are coming in, from rising national insurance, from minimum wage, from utility bills, from food inflation. All of those sort of things affect the hospitality industry across the board, so it's not just pubs. So there will be calls across the industry for much, much more support coming from government.
Yes, Tom Kerridge's view there. And you mentioned the pub chain that's closing a number of its pubs, suggesting that it struggled against rising costs, including that, the national insurance increases, the minimum wage increases, and weaker consumer spending, particularly among its younger clientele. So, you know, pubs are struggling, that people can't even afford to go there. Yes. And prices are going up still. As we know, inflation continues at a high level.
And this is particularly true in rural areas. I live just outside a small village. In rural areas, the pub is really important. It's not just a place to buy a drink. It's a community centre in so many ways. Did you know that Jeremy Clarkson has said he's not going to serve Labour MPs in his pub?
So him as well?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
No surprise.
Yeah, well, that was much the same, actually. So what happens now? Does the pressure continue? I suppose that's the question.
Yeah, I think the Chancellor will be hoping that by offering this concession to pubs is where this argument, I think, gets most emotional for some of the reasons that Matthew's just talked about. If you've got Labour MPs, backbench MPs, getting very exercised about pubs in their local constituencies, I think the Chancellor will be hoping, well, this is enough, and this is enough spending by the government in order to sort of make this go away, and enough of a concession. Whether it is or not, though, will be another question. And I'm sure there will still be some backbench MPs, if you've got really long-standing local restaurants, for example, in a constituency, restaurants that have been open for a number of years, and now they're saying that they may not be able to continue. That is still going to really concern Labour MPs.
And Tom Kerridge, his broader point was Labour doesn't really get business. And is that going to be a lasting critique, do you think?
Well, they would challenge that, of course. The Chancellor would challenge it. You're right. I mean, there were quite a lot of Labour MPs got up and raised concerns that so many Labour MPs of all parties shamelessly name-checked pubs in the Commons this afternoon. And I now know that St Albans has 11 pubs because Daisy Cooper, the MP, said so. But yes, the lobbying, I mean, chefs like Tom Kerridge, they're good lobbyists on behalf of the pub trade, and they have been quite successful. And the music industry, well, there's still a doubt about it. I mean, there were promises that there is help for the music, and there was also the government was talking about a high street strategy, you know, looking at shops and everything else, saving the high street. But it sounds like yet another of those government reviews that's going to take ages.
Apologies, I'm going to stop you there. I got lost back in. There's a live event to go to. Donald Trump holding a political rally in Iowa tonight, hoping to deflect from the backlash that he is facing over the shootings in Minneapolis. Let's show you the pictures then. The US president is about to speak live. He's already addressed the situation in Minnesota tonight. He says his administration will de-escalate a little bit, and he struck a conciliatory tone about the death of Alex Pretty, an ICU nurse killed by federal agents in Minnesota. Well, as we wait for more details of that incident and for the US president, in fact, to speak live, Mr. Trump has addressed the situation in Minnesota tonight. He says his administration will de-escalate. He struck a conciliatory tone about the death of Alex Pretty.
I haven't heard that, but certainly he shouldn't have been carrying a gun. But hey, look, bottom line, everybody in this room, we view that as a very unfortunate incident, okay? Right. Everyone, right. Unless you're a stupid person, very, very unfortunate incident. I don't like that he had a gun. I don't like that he had 2 fully loaded magazines. That's a lot of bad stuff. And despite that, I say that's a very unfortunate incident.
But as Mr. Trump softens his stance, yet another former president has come out against him over his immigration enforcement policies. That's after interventions from both Bill Clinton and Barack Obama. So Joe Biden is who we're talking about. This is what he's had to say tonight. We don't hear from him often, remember. He's waded in, posting this on social media. What has unfolded in Minneapolis this past month betrays our most basic values as Americans. We are not a nation that guns down our citizens in the street. We are not a nation that allows our citizens to be brutalised for exercising their constitutional rights. Well, he then went on to call for a full, fair and transparent investigation into the killings of Alex Pretty and Rennie Good. So let's bring in our panel there. Matthew, what do you make of this idea that the president is softening and the intervention there of Joe Biden, who we really don't hear from often now?
Yeah, that's a uncharacteristically coherent intervention from Joe Biden. As for Donald Trump, he's got himself into a terrible tangle again. He does tend to climb down when he meets stiff opposition. He must know that this has all gone wrong. I'm beginning to wonder whether he's senile.
OK, well, let's lay that out there quickly. But let us go now to Iowa. Our US correspondent Mark Stone is there. And Mark, I know you've spoken to those who are protesting at this Trump rally, one in tears, in fact, saying this is not our America. Is the president reeling from the Minnesota backlash and looking for some sort of reset here?
Well, look, I think he's definitely looking for a reset. I mean, that much is clear by the stark shift in tone from Saturday on the day of the killing of Alex Pretty and today. Let me paint you a picture of where we are, because we're on the western edge of Des Moines, Iowa. Des Moines is the state capital of Iowa. We're in a place called Clive. It's kind of a sort of, it feels like a suburb. There's a petrol station here. There are some car garages over on this side. This road has been closed off, and it's absolutely full with anti-Trump protesters. You know, there are hundreds and hundreds of people who've been coming down here over the course of the day. It's well below zero. That hasn't stopped them, because they are deeply, deeply angry about this Trump administration, particularly, of course, for what happened on Saturday, 4 hours drive north of here in Minnesota, in Minneapolis. Donald Trump is in the building. If we spin around to the right, just beyond these people, beyond that forecourt, very unglamorous. On the other side of that is an event centre where the president is currently, well, is about to speak. And Anna, you're right. I mean, he clearly realises that the way that members of his administration came out on Saturday and described or framed the narrative, called Alex Pretty a domestic terrorist, said he was an assassin. All of that has now been kind of pushed to one side by the president. He's trying to reshape this narrative once again, but people are believing their eyes. They saw the videos and they're deeply angry. And yet within that hall, clearly, there are many people who fully support the president. I was talking to them earlier on. They believe that his immigration policies are spot on. A couple of them said that maybe the messaging has gone a bit awry, but generally the divide, as ever, is vast.
Yes, we see it right there. Mark, thank you very much indeed. There's pressure now, aren't there, on key players in the Trump administration, on the Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem. Today, there were protests outside the hotel where this man, Greg Bovino, the top US Border Patrol official who's been leading the efforts in Minneapolis, trying to stop him leaving because he's supposed to be shipped out back to California again to his old job. So what do you think comes of that pressure, and what might we expect to hear from Trump tonight about that incident? Or will he not mention it?
Well, I think we're going to have to wait and see. As Matthew says, Trump is incredibly unpredictable at the moment, and no one really knows what he's going to say on a stage until he gets up there and starts speaking. But it is interesting, I think, that we've seen him beat a little bit of a retreat since the weekend. I mean, I think it's hard to sort of overstate just how extraordinary it is to see these three former US presidents come out and condemn in no uncertain terms what's been happening in Minnesota. Normally, former US presidents, they take a step back. They do not come out and make live comments on an existing president. This is something that is quite unprecedented in the US, and that follows on from the seriousness of what we saw happen, which is, US citizens essentially shot by ICE agents in circumstances that are incredibly troubling. They're just exercising their right to protest, their democratic right to protest. So this is a really, really significant situation, and it's not just former presidents. In Minnesota, we've seen the Republican gubernatorial candidate. He has actually said that he's not going to be standing as a Republican candidate anymore because he can't do it in good conscience. So we are actually starting to see something that I think people were hoping that Republicans around Trump might start to do at a bit of an earlier point and say, hang on a second, this has just gone too far. What is happening is unconstitutional, and it is very, very troubling when it comes to the rights and freedoms of American citizens. So who knows where it's going to end up, but it feels like to us sitting over here in the UK, feels like a dangerous situation at the moment.
Yes, and let's head back to Mark Stone. Apologies, Mark, for some of the banners people that are holding behind you. I know there are very strong feelings with regard to what's been happening across America with this immigration enforcement. Do you see this definitely as a turning point now? Because that's what people were calling for at the weekend, weren't they, after the shooting?
Look, first of all, apologies if you do spot any words that may offend you on some of the banners. That there are high feelings here. There's no question about that. Look, I think it will be a turning point in one sense, and we've seen that already. We've seen that Donald Trump has removed some of the key figures who were involved in Minneapolis, who've been involved in the ICE operations in other cities as well. He's put Tom Homan in there. He's the border czar. His policies and his views on immigration may be exactly the same as those who he's removed, but I think he's less ideological. And I think, he worked under Obama as well. So I think we will see perhaps less of the chaos that has played out in Minneapolis, in DC, in fact, over the course of the summer. And in Los Angeles. We'll see a little less of that, but I don't think the underlying policy is going to change. I think Trump is clear that he wants to continue with his immigration policy, which, let's be honest, let's be clear, down on the southern border, he has done what he promised he would do. He's stopped the chaos down there. Under Biden, there was massive chaos on the southern border. That has stopped. But what he's then done is gone so much further, and I think that has caused so much unease, not only clearly with Democrats, but also with those on the other side. So I think that's the shift that we will see, a shift in tone and perhaps a more subtle shift in policy as well. But I think the core of the policy, the immigration policy, won't change. And for many people here, that will clearly be a disappointment. But Anna, he'll focus on the economy as well. That's his key challenge, I think. People are not feeling the apparently improving economy in America. That's a really big problem for him. Not just immigration, the economy as well.
Mark, when things begin to unravel for Donald Trump, don't you think they might unravel very fast? Because for everybody who's speaking out now, there must be 10 who are biting their lips because he still seems to be in control. I'm just wondering whether things are turning faster than we thought.
Hold that thought, Matthew, because I think Mr. Trump himself will be speaking as soon as he gets to that microphone, applauding those, of course, who are there, coming to support him. It is, of course, election year. There's critical midterms. We've seen him earlier this year already pleading for the vote to secure his work in Congress. So let's see as he moves his way towards the US presidential seal, Donald Trump speaking in Iowa.
Where there's pride in every American heart, and it's time we stand and say that I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free, and I won't forget the men who died, who gave that right to me, and I gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today, 'cause there ain't no doubt I love this land.
So listening to God Bless the USA by Lee Greenwood as Mr. Trump smiles at those who've come to see him, doing his dance as usual.
Where at least I know I'm free, and I won't forget the men who died.
So proud to be an American, just as those outside who are protesting against the scenes in Minnesota say that what they've witnessed is not American by any means. And, you know, this is the difficulty he faces, isn't it? This almost guttural disgust that people have had after the shooting of that veterans ICU nurse.
Yes, yes.
Thank you. Well, thank you very much, and I'm thrilled to be back in the great state of Iowa with so many proud, hardworking American patriots, which is what you are. It's an amazing state. What a place. Boy, do we have some victories here. Were they the greatest? So exactly 2 years ago this month, it was the people of Iowa who put us on a rocket ship back to the White House. It was a rocket. That was a quick one. After a rigged election, we had a rigged election. I said, do we do it again? And I said, I think we better do it again. Not too many people who would have said that. But we did so well the second time, I said, well, we won twice, we got to do it a third time. Should we do it a fourth time? Four victories. 4 victories. We got the right team over there. The right team over there. I said, geez, that would be easy for you. That wouldn't even be work. But you came out by the thousands on a cold and snowy winter evening. Remember that beautiful evening? And together we won the Iowa caucuses in a 30-point landslide. That was great. I'll never forget it. It was so freezing. You think it's cold now? That blew it away. Whatever happened to global warming? You know? Now it's, you know, it's like one of those things. But it was the coldest night. I remember it was way below zero. And they say, sir, you don't have to come till
Well, we will monitor President Trump for you speaking in Iowa, whether he talks about the immigration enforcement issues that have beset Minneapolis and anything else he says of interest. But right now, coming up next, we will take a first look at what is making the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers. Don't go away.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter?
We've done the work and the reading, so you don't have to.
Being a Sky News presenter.
Hello and welcome. Westminster, the heart of British politics.
I'm so sorry about what happened to you.
So what on earth is going on?
It's not true.
Can I tell you what I think?
It's really unusual. Mornings with Rich and Frost.
Let's crack on. Let's get started.
Well, in a moment, we'll have the newspapers. First, some breaking news, and the Prime Minister has defended his attempts to build bridges with China as he heads to Beijing tonight. Well, he says, like it or not, China matters for the UK. As one of the world's biggest economic players, a strategic and consistent relationship with them is firmly in our national interest. That does not mean turning a blind eye to the challenges they pose, but engaging even where we disagree. Well, let's bring in our chief political correspondent, John Craig, who's here again. So, John, who is he taking? What's he doing? And what is he hoping to achieve?
Well, he's taking nearly 60 British businesses and cultural organisations, and the list includes people from HSBC, GSK, Jaguar Land Rover, the National Theatre. This is the first trip to China by a British Prime Minister since Theresa May early in 2018, so 8 years. And the Prime Minister is talking tonight, as he's just about to take off, I think, for China, about from how we've gone in this country from a golden age under David Cameron and George Osborne to an ice age. And he says no more. In his speech at the Guildhall before Christmas, the Lady Mayor's banquet, he talked about how Britain had been very remiss. He said, staggering, he said it was, that no leader had gone to China for so long. He talked about Trump visits, Macron, Merz and other German leaders, and he said that's all got to change. So tonight he is announcing that he said that for years our approach to China has been dogged by inconsistency. He's going to Beijing for talks with the government. He's going to Shanghai to meet British and Chinese businesses. And, of course, what they're hoping is that they drum up lots of business for the UK economy. When Theresa May went, it was something like £9 billion worth. He'll be hoping for the same. 60 British businesses. I've been on these planes where you've got all these business people. They're always in the best seats, and we journalists are in the cheap seats at the back.
Matthew, just very quickly.
John, I imagine you'll know more about this than me, that a lot of the deals that he's going to bring back have actually been agreed in advance. Is that right?
Yes, I'm sure it is. I mean, we're told that this trip's been about a year in the planning. And yes, indeed. But I guess there'll be lots of signing of deals by some of these business chiefs and indeed the Prime Minister. And he's got the Business Secretary, Peter Kyle, with him. And he's got, which minister is it? It is one of the Treasury ministers. Yeah, Lucy Rigby, that's right, yeah. So a pretty high-powered delegation.
You'll have your chance to talk about it a bit later on. I want to just talk about the papers now. Let's see the front pages, shall we? Starting with the Eye, which hears that although pubs and music venues will benefit from the government's U-turn on increases to business rates, restaurants will not. Usually a supporter of Labour, the Mirror isn't happy with the U-turn, calling it half measures. The Daily Mail says the decision puts the final nail in the coffin of the High Street. The Guardian carries accounts of the alleged murder of civilians amid widespread anti-government protests in Iran. The Financial Times hears that Trump administration officials have told the Ukrainian government that an offer of security guarantees from the US is likely to be contingent on the Donbas region being surrendered to Russia. The Daily Express understands the government's one-in, one-out migration deal with France has resulted in more migrants being allowed in to Britain versus those who have been sent back. The Telegraph carries allegations that, as a barrister, Sir Keir Starmer led a case that resulted in British soldiers being prosecuted for war crimes. Downing Street disputes that characterisation, insisting he was not an advocate for either side. And The Star tells us about holiday packages to Benidorm, themed around horse racing's Cheltenham Festival. For some reason, not quite sure why. So let's bring in our guests then. Let's start with the Daily Mail, shall we? Which, like many of newspapers, says Reeves puts the nail in the coffin of the high street and sends Junior to the Commons to reveal the betrayal of pubs, hotels and small shops. I guess she was at a pub herself, though, wasn't she?
She was, and we've seen those images of her kind of pulling a pint today. The government will be hoping that pubs look at this and say, well, glass half full. This is a significant discount on business rates, the business rates increases that were announced at the budget. They're hoping that this will mollify Labour backbenchers who've been very vocal with the Prime Minister and Number 10 about the potential for pubs closing in their own constituency as a result of these rates rises, and they're hoping it will all go away. Obviously, the papers that are less government supporting, but also, interestingly, the Mirror, which is not a paper normally hostile to the government, have got a bit more of a glass half empty approach to this, which is to say, well, this doesn't go far enough, it doesn't extend to hotels and restaurants, and it's coming on top of the really difficult rise in national insurance, employer national insurance, that was announced a year prior to the last budget. So it's really tricky politics for the government, I think. I think there will be those who sort of see this and raise questions because actually, if the Treasury had been completely on top of this, they could have averted it altogether. If they'd just done the sums and figured out what phasing out some of that business rates relief that we still had in place from COVID was going to have for pubs, they could have averted this story in the first place. But they didn't do that. They really did seem caught unawares when you had pubs coming out the next day after the budget saying, hang on a second, the rateable values are going up by tens of thousands of pounds, which leads to big increases in rates. So I think glass half empty, glass half full, depends from where you're sitting.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't help that half the papers seem to have campaigns to save the pubs. The Mirror, your pub needs you. I think the Telegraph's got to save your pub. And I mean, you know, we want our pubs, don't we?
Yeah, and as we've said, what is easier and more productive for a backbench MP than to stand up for his local pub in his local constituency, and that they'll all be doing that. The government have messed up the communications on this because some days ago, I think more than a week ago, there was a rumour that there was going to be a U-turn on the pubs thing. And so everybody then hoped it would be a complete U-turn, so that what has now come out has actually disappointed people because it's less than people had begun to believe might happen.
Let's go to the Financial Times now, shall we? They've turned their attention to Ukraine. We've had an amazing piece from our Security and Defence editor, Deborah Haynes, today about how people are living in appalling conditions, in darkness, in the capital and elsewhere. But this is about what Ukraine would need to agree to get their security guarantees off America. And it is to give up the Donbass, which is the fortress cities, which is the higher ground. It is a really big ask, isn't it, Matthew, for Ukraine?
Yes, but it's been asked for quite some time now, and it's not entirely clear that Zelensky, in the end, will break the agreement or the potential agreement as far as he's concerned. The Donbass is Russian-speaking. There would be problems for Ukraine in taking over the Donbass again, and I think it's a bargaining chip. And in the end, Zelensky may have to yield. The important thing is not what is yielded; it is what is gained in return. What are these security guarantees going to be like? That's what the Ukrainians will really want to know.
Will you say that? But is it enough, do you think, Sonia, for those people who are living in the Donbass, still under Ukrainian control, to give up their freedom? Because they remind us it is freedom not to live under the Russians that they are fighting for.
Well, this is the issue. It's a deeply unpopular proposition in Ukraine. Zelensky himself has said, well, look, we may be able to make some concessions here. If it remains recognised as Ukrainian, we could perhaps withdraw our troops. That actually probably is not a compromise that would be OK with President Putin. And we always come back to the same issue here, which is this is very Donald Trump. Donald Trump's style of peacemaking is to announce that there's a deal and try and bully people into falling in line behind it. And sometimes it can get you somewhere, as it has in the Middle East, although there's a long way to go yet in the Middle East. But it's much, much more difficult in Ukraine, Russia, because actually President Putin hasn't really agreed to anything yet. No. And so you've got Trump saying, well, look, I've got a deal, it sits with me. Nothing has actually materially been agreed. So it does feel a bit like Trump fronting this up without the substance.
Let's stay abroad and go to Iran now. I don't know if, like me, you're obsessing about the military build-up that we're seeing in the vicinity of Iran, with estimates now coming out about the number of dead, suggestion that it could be more than 30,000 who were killed in these protests, and some truly terrible situations where people have been seen in morgues with medical tubes coming out of them and with a bullet suggesting they were shot in hospitals. I mean, awful stories here.
Awful. And Donald Trump did say right at the beginning that if people began to be killed in Iran, he wouldn't stand idly by. They have begun to be killed. We now know in larger numbers than we thought, and he is still standing idly by. There's another strange... the thing with... Trump is a bit like those mechanical battery puppies that you buy as toys. They go in one direction till they hit a wall, then they go off until they hit another wall, then they go off until they hit another wall. He's bouncing around all over the place. Meanwhile, terrible things are happening in Iran.
Yes, distracted himself with Greenland for a while in the middle of all of this. But you might say it is to get the military hardware in place. Not only the offensive capabilities, but the defensive too, because Israel will no doubt have been urging them to get more protective elements nearer to the prospect of theatre here. But the story is now about possible doctors being apprehended who have treated people. You know, the pressure still is on those people in Iran after this.
Absolutely, and you know, that's one of the reasons why it's been hard to get an accurate sense of just how many people, especially young people, have been killed in these protests in Iran. But doctors are saying that actually lots of them are too scared to come to hospitals because they fear the consequences from the Iranian state authorities. So now you're seeing essentially under-the-radar efforts, doctors going to places that aren't hospitals where young people can come. And you've got lots of young people coming, some with really quite serious injuries who have not felt able to go to hospital because, you know, they just fear arrest, detention, execution. And that is what we've seen happen to so many young people in Iran. And I have to say, I just think their bravery is extraordinary because these are young people who are risking everything to go out in protest for freedom against an incredibly authoritarian regime in Iran, and they are taking huge risks, as this story really illustrates.
The doomsday clock, I'm told. Let's have a look, shall we, at that? It's in the Metro. It is 85 seconds to midnight, we're told. Armageddon is a bit worried. The clock is ticking closer to the end. This is cheery.
Yes. I think scientists and analysts calculate the risk in a range of different possible disasters of the thing happening and work out how close we could be. Not how close we are, but how close we could be to the apocalypse.
And the apocalypse is caused by what in this instance?
It is apparently threats of nuclear war and climate change. So I think we're all aware that, you know, some of these threats are pretty existential, maybe not 85 seconds away, it's all relative. I assume this is some relative measure since the sort of beginning of time or the beginning of humanity or the beginning of the planet. But, you know, it does feel like the world that we're living in. Yes, we've always had climate change, you know, in the last couple of decades hanging over us, and it certainly feels like we are not making the progress that we need to avoid reaching that tipping point beyond which we get really catastrophic climate change that is going to very, very seriously affect our ability to live across big bits of the world. But also, with everything that's going on at the moment, I mean, it was only, 20 years ago where we thought it was the end of history and we were living in a time of peace forever. And now that feels like it couldn't be further from the truth, really, with what's going on in Russia, Ukraine, the Middle East, what's happening in the US. Everything feels incredibly unstable.
OK, well, amid all that doomsday...
So sorry for the depression.
...doomsday saying, the geopolitics, speeches, Donald Trump in Davos last week, there was another thing that caused a stir, Emmanuel Macron's eyewear. you remember it? The French president channeled his inner Tom Cruise with blue reflective aviators to stylishly disguise a medical condition.
Having a place like Europe, which sometimes is too slow, for sure, and needs to be reformed, for sure.
Well, the specs drew comments from Donald Trump and in the weeks since have gone viral on social media with meme makers making hay of the look. But now even Keir Starmer can't help getting in on the game, donning a pair of aviators at a comedy show to pay homage, or homage, one might say, to the French president. Bonsoir to you, I think. Macron replied to that video, commenting, for sure. A saying of his, which also took over socials, while Keir piled on again with this AI-generated image of himself and the French president in full Top Gun get-up. Sonia?
I think this is one of those rare occasions where political humour actually works.
Yes.
So often politicians try to be funny and get it wrong, and it's a bit of a damp squib. But this is genuinely actually really funny, and I have to say, I like that Top Gun mock-up.
Yes, yes. I think Keir Starmer's premiership is secure again after that. I don't think Macron liked that very much.
Really?
Somehow. No, I don't.
Because it was a medical condition?
Yes. You have to show you're a good sport and have a little chuckle. But I just got the impression from the way he spoke that he wasn't specially charmed.
Yes, well, given the pressure from Andy Burnham, or indeed Angela Rayner, the Times reported tonight that she's got the ATMPs and £1 million, I think it is, to go for it if she wanted to. Does he need to do a bit more of this, do you think, Keir?
I think it's going to take a bit more of this to sort of calm the nerves of nervous Labour backbenchers who are very worried about losing their seats. I kind of feel like, yes, Starmer's people have temporarily headed off that, showdown with Andy Burnham from blocking him and running in the forthcoming by-election. But that's only really a temporary heading off. We've got a Times front page which is talking about Angela Rayner. There's loads of speculation in the air about Wes Streeting. Fundamentally, Keir Starmer is deeply unpopular with voters. Just a year and a half after the last general election, you don't make that go away with a joke with aviators. Yes, unfortunately for Starmer.
Putting himself forward for the seat that Andy Burnham is not now going to fight is actually, I'm no admirer of his, but he's a formidable character, Matthew Goodwin, and he's going to be, I think, the Reform candidate. Now, wouldn't it be funny if he won so handsomely that we realised that even if Burnham had stood, he wouldn't have won and he'd have lost Manchester?
Yes, certainly today he was talking about it being a referendum on reform, whether they can deliver what we see in polling into reality. Talk more about that a bit later on. Now, we will come next to Storm Chandra. It's torn through parts of the UK, leaving in its way flooding and disruption. We'll get the latest on that next.
I'm Dominic Waghorn, Sky's International Affairs Editor, covering a world that seems to be unravelling.
It's not his country, it's ours.
Sky News, the full story first, free wherever you get your news. It's half an hour now past the deadline that Hamas issued, and we've now seen a third barrage of rockets coming in.
There's a fresh look to your news from 10 on Sky News.
It's a new show called The Wrap, every night of the week.
We'll still bring you the day's biggest stories,
but with more lively debate,
more in-depth commentary,
and more of what you need to know.
Plus a look at what's making tomorrow's headlines.
The Wrap.
Everything wrapped up for you from 10 on Sky News.
I witnessed the complete destruction of a place linked to my childhood memories.
This is insane.
I'm Yusra Al-Bagher, Sky's Africa correspondent based in Johannesburg, South Africa. I felt awe when we saw the mountain gorillas in Rwanda.
They call him the king of the jungle. This is the alpha silverback.
Sky News. Get the full story first.
We're so used to seeing you with Rob. What's it like doing this kind of stuff when he's not here?
Yeah, I miss him. He just inspired me to be a better person. He's shown us what living looks like in the toughest and most difficult of circumstances.
I'm Greg Milam, and I'm Sky's Chief North of England correspondent.
He had a beautiful death. This is about a dying person's choice to die peacefully when they want to, on their terms.
Our app gives you the very best of Sky News wherever you are. Breaking news, videos and analysis.
Evidence of the crisis.
Podcasts watching us live.
I'm live in Jerusalem.
Wherever you get your podcast.
All in one place and all at just the touch of a screen. The Sky News app. Get the full story first.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist.
A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan had the right to respond.
You're like, what?
A historic day here today. Congratulations, this is a huge moment. But what happens now?
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
They call him the king of the jungle.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Yusra Al-Baghir has this report.
And this is what's left of it.
As a woman of colour, how did the Harris campaign speak to you?
People risk their lives to speak to us for this report.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
We're trying to see as much as we can.
Now, if you've been following the live blog on the Sky News website and app across the day, you will have seen dramatic images caused by Storm Chandra, record high river levels in Devon, danger to life, wind warnings in Northern Ireland. It really has left chaos in her wake. Well, she is the third major storm to hit the UK this month after Goretti and Ingrid, which also caused significant damage and disruption. Across Scotland, ferries and flights were cancelled and roads had to be closed. We spoke to Billy in Axminster, who said his home in Devon had been inundated.
It's up to my waist with water. All my furniture's down, all in my kitchen, can't get downstairs. And yeah, so I've had to climb out the window.
But your family?
Yeah, I've got my two kids in there, my brother in there at the minute. Yeah, they're upstairs. Just got to get some food and drink now.
So they're safe enough. What about getting in and out? Are you struggling to...
Yeah, this is the first time I've come out, and I think a tractor's going to come in a minute and try and get me back over there. So save me wading through it.
Well, you mentioned the dangers of climate change and the doomsday clock, didn't you? You know, this is extreme rain once again, wind elsewhere across the UK. You know, do you think we need to see more mitigation measures, for example, clearing drains properly, warning people that you do not drive into flooded water, which, when I had to turn around myself only last week driving home?
Yeah, this feels really important because it's something that we are facing more and more. It feels like during these winter months, it's quite common to turn on the TV and see pictures of extreme flooding, very high levels of rainfall, very high wind, for example. So absolutely you need the mitigation. And one of the difficulties is that there are a lot of climate scientists who believe that these more extreme weather events that we're seeing are absolutely linked to the climate crisis. But it's quite hard to sort of motivate people. It's a very long-term aim, isn't it, to get them to say, well, look, some of this extreme weather that you're experiencing, we actually really do need to think about our strategy for the climate crisis over the next 10 to 20 years. Otherwise, we could be seeing even more of it, which is why so much of this ultimately comes down to government action, because you can't really rely on individuals to carry the can on this.
Yeah, we're not used to clearing the leaves out of our gutters and getting our hands into our drains and making sure they're clear so your front door doesn't flood, are we? We're not in the psychological framework to be ready for this.
No, we're not. And anyway, that can be counterproductive. If you clear your gutters, the water runs downhill faster and is caught up somewhere else. And yes, government ought to do more, perhaps, but like King Canute, the government can't really turn back some of this flooding. A lot of, particularly England, but it seems Northern Ireland as well, is almost below the level of the rivers that are around it. And if they are going to burst their banks, and we can't build up banks everywhere, there are going to be more of these floods. I think what government can do is stop house building in areas that are very susceptible to flooding and more susceptible now that flooding has become more common.
Yeah, I feel like we've been saying that for decades,
Yes,
don't you?
yes, we have.
Let's see if Chandra has been passing through. Here's the weather.
You're looking happy.
Well, the forecast looks good.
So you've sorted the travel insurance then?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors Sky News Weather.
So after today's flooding and disruption from Storm Chandra, tomorrow looks drier and calmer overall before more rain reaches the southwest on Thursday. Many places will have a dry and chilly start with icy stretches and some fog, but there will be a few blustery showers around. Ireland, Northern Ireland and North East Scotland look most at risk of showers through the morning, with a few over Wales and southwest England too. Elsewhere, it will be largely dry, plenty of sunshine, but fog may be slow to clear from northeast England. It'll be less windy than today and a bit milder away from any lingering fog. The afternoon will bring more of the same, but the far southwest will see more organised showers by the evening. Thursday then will be rather windy, with rain moving into Ireland and southwest Britain, bringing the risk again of further flooding.
All Clear Travel Insurance proudly sponsors Sky News Weather.
Well, coming up next on The Wrap, like it or not, China matters for the UK. That is the message from the Prime Minister this evening as he heads to Beijing. We will discuss that next, and also dip into President Trump, who is speaking in Iowa this evening. Back with all of that after this break.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist? I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up. Being a Sky News journalist. Ed Conway, Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us? Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office. Here it is. First off, just the scale of what we're looking at. Our data shows it's been happening. Question is, why it hasn't been stopped.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter?
We've done the work and the reading, so you don't have to.
Being a Sky News presenter.
Hello and welcome. Westminster, the heart of British politics.
I'm so sorry about what happened to you. So what on earth is going on?
It's not true.
Can I tell you what I think? It's really unusual. Mornings with Rich and Frost. Let's crack on. Let's get started.
Tonight on The Wrap, a defiant Prime Minister heads to China. Sir Keir Starmer dismisses concerns about cozying up to Beijing, insisting that, like it or not, China matters for the UK. As Downing Street says, the PM will not trade economic access for our national security. We ask, is a closer relationship with China really worth the risk? Also tonight, Donald Trump addresses the MAGA faithful in Iowa as pressure grows over the killing of civilians by anti-immigration officers in Minneapolis. The president bends a little in the face of the growing backlash, but has he badly underestimated the mood in America? Dire warnings of job losses and closures prompt the Chancellor to unpick her plans to hike business rates for pubs and music venues. But critics say it's not enough and question why there's no help for hotels and restaurants. Plus, cars submerged, homes damaged and schools closed as Storm Chandra blows into the UK and leaves chaos in her wake. We discuss today's biggest stories with Sonia Soda and Matthew Paris. Plus, a first look at the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers, including reports that the US may still be insisting on Ukraine ceding territory to Russia. Hello, good evening to you. Matthew, Sonia, like it or not, China matters for us, so says Keir Starmer as he heads to Beijing. Is he right to go?
Of course he's right to go. Yes, communications matter. Being able to talk to people matters. We do business with China. We need to do business with China. They want to do business with us, so yes, he should go. These visits are, to some degree, rather ceremonial affairs. As John Craig was saying a little while ago, many of the deals that will be signed there have already been more or less sewn up. But it's important to keep things on an even keel with a country that we don't entirely trust, but do need to work with.
Sonia?
I'd agree with that. I think that Starmer's got a fine line to tread, though, because there are really live national security concerns about China and the role that China plays in the UK. There are human rights questions, for example, the ongoing imprisonment of the human rights activist Jimmy Lai. So Starmer is going to have to bring some of those things up. He can't be seen to be a pushover on them. And at the end of the day, this is a transactional relationship with a country like China because they're not a natural ally and we don't share their values.
So those claims then that closer relations with China could harm national security and damage Britain's relationship with the United States. The PM has just put out a statement. Let's take a look. He says, like it or not, China matters for the UK. As one of the world's biggest economic players, a strategic and consistent relationship with them is firmly in our national interest. That does not mean turning a blind eye to the challenges they pose, but engaging even where we disagree. Well, our Asia correspondent, Helen Ann Smith, has more on the challenge facing the PM from Thamestown, a British-themed development outside Shanghai, which has seen better days, to be fair.
As a Brit, this might be the strangest place in China. It's been built to exactly emulate a British town, although now it's a little deserted and dilapidated. But is this a good metaphor for UK-China relations? Well, the British Prime Minister is coming this week and he wants to give things a bit of a revamp. So what's on the table? What will be the stumbling blocks? And how does China see it? This place is slightly odd. It's a little bit like being in West London if West London had been slightly forgotten about. Look, this is the Thamestown pub. Some familiar faces, we think. This one's meant to be Princess Diana. Oh, David Beckham.
What could be more British than the phone box, eh? I wonder if it works.
No. But there is a serious point to all this. This place was built in the 2000s, a time when China was getting richer and opening up, a time where all things British were considered desirable, and a time when there was real promise in the relationship. But things have changed since then. China's become more self-sufficient and more wary of the West. And the UK has spent 10 years flip-flopping on its China policy. Previous governments had very little engagement at all. It's that Keir Starmer wants to change. It's the reason he's here.
Well, our chief political correspondent, John Craig, has joined us. I see the Telegraph, John, in their headline says, we'll be safer and richer with China's help, claims the Prime Minister as he defends this trip. Does it need defending, do you think?
Yes, because there are critics
One of them is Priti Patel, Dame Priti Patel, the Shadow Foreign Secretary, who said in this very studio on Sunday morning with Trevor Phillips he shouldn't be going. A lot of the so-called China hawks on the Tory benches, you think of people like Sir Ian Duncan Smith and others, Tom Tugendhat and others, who've been, I think, sanctioned, haven't they? They're very critical of this. But the Prime Minister has said now for months, going back to his speech at the Guildhall, the Lady Mayor's banquet, defending and explaining why he's going. Now, in that statement that you mentioned, we've learned that he's going to Beijing and Shanghai. He's going to be accompanied by nearly 60 British businesses and cultural organisations, and they include, for example, HSBC, GSK, Jaguar Land Rover, the National Theatre, the Natural History Museum and British Airways, for example, who I think they're flying the plane, aren't they, British Airways? I'm pretty sure of that. But anyway, as you've said, he's issued this defiant statement about, like it or not, China matters. He talks about China being one of the world's biggest economic players. He says, Mr. Keir says, a strategic and consistent relationship with them is firmly in our national interest. And then he says that doesn't mean turning a blind eye. Then he goes on to say, we will not trade economic cooperation for our national security. So he did talk in that Guildhall speech, but it was right at the beginning of December, about how, compared with other leaders like President Trump, Macron, Chancellor Merz, no British leader has been to China since it was February 2018. It was Theresa May. And he said all that has got to change, and he's determined to change it.
Yeah, but the problem is after Theresa May went in 2018, we had all the problem with the Hong Kong activists and the clampdown on democracy in Hong Kong. Hong Kongers who then moved to the UK and are amongst those who've been protesting against the sanctioning of this Chinese embassy. So you've got to remember those people as well, haven't you, in this relationship?
Yes, you do. I was at the Buxton International Festival a year ago with Chris Patten, who was last governor of Hong Kong. A lot of Chinese students had come up from Manchester just to touch him. There were tears in their eyes. These are Chinese people too, and we're responsible for them.
Yes, and yet the Prime Minister in the statement pointing out other leaders have visited, that actually this is really critical for, our trade relations with, one of the biggest global powerhouses in the world.
Yeah, the question is, what do you trade for, those sort of economic trade deals, I suppose? And there's always going to be something that's kind of asked for in return. And I guess the thing that Keir Starmer has to do is he's sort of got to maintain British values and principles. He's got to be raising the plight of human rights activists in Hong Kong. He's got to be doing all that at the same time as trying to strike some of these economic deals. And I think he has to be very clear-eyed about the fact that, this isn't going to strike a trade deal, say, with the US 10 years ago. It's not liaising or striking deals with the European Union. China absolutely is a huge and growing economic player in the world, cannot be ignored. But this is not a country that is our natural ally or shares our values. So it's a difficult one. It really is.
So are we concerned about the impact with America, for example, threatening 100% tariffs on Canada, for example, after Carney did a deal with Beijing himself and so on? But even though Trump himself, wants to have relations and meet President Xi.
Well, opponents of the Chagos handover claim, of course, that it's going to play into the hands of China. And, of course, they're opponents of that deal. We saw them line up in the Commons this week. Conservatives and, indeed, Reform MPs are arguing, of course, that President Trump and his allies are set to veto it. Now, the government denies that, but I think that that Chagos deal is in some trouble now because they can't get it through the House of Lords. They had to pull it the other day. So that is a worry as well.
Yeah, Diego Garcia, critical in whatever is going to unfold with Iran, as well as we've been watching too. Yeah, there's the headline then, right-hand column for you in the Daily Telegraph. We will be safer and richer with China's help, embracing, it has to be said, that relationship. Full coverage, of course, due to arrive on Wednesday in China. Well, to America now, where Donald Trump has been holding a rally in Iowa as he looks to deflect from the backlash over the shootings in Minneapolis. He has softened his stance tonight, saying we're going to de-escalate a little bit. Well, so far he's been speaking about domestic politics, mainly about farmers, in fact, and the US economy. Our team is listening into that for you, and you can also scan the QR code on screen if you want to watch and listen to what he has to say. On the way to the rally, though, he stopped at a restaurant and was asked about the death of nurse Alex Pretty in Minnesota.
I haven't heard that, but certainly he shouldn't have been carrying a gun. But hey, look, bottom line, everybody in this room, we view that as a very unfortunate incident, okay? Right. Everyone, right. Unless you're a stupid person, very, very unfortunate incident. I don't like that he had a gun. I don't like that he had 2 fully loaded magazines. That's a lot of bad stuff. And despite that, I say that's a very unfortunate incident.
Donald Trump there. Well, let's show you as well what another former president has said tonight, coming out against Mr. Trump over what his immigration enforcement policies entail. After interventions, remember, from Bill Clinton and, in fact, Barack Obama as well. This is what Joe Biden had to say tonight. And remember, we don't hear from him very often. What has unfolded in Minneapolis this past month betrays our most basic values as Americans. We are not a nation that guns down our citizens in the street. We are not a nation that allows our citizens to be brutalised for exercising their constitutional rights. He then went on to call for a full, fair and transparent investigation into the killings of both Alex Pretty and Renee Good. Strong words there, Matthew, from the former president.
Yes, but very strong words. And I was struck by Trump saying that Alex Pretty shouldn't have been carrying a gun. Is it the NRA, the National Rifle Association? Anyway, the American gun owners lobby. They won't like to hear that. They don't suppose, and they wouldn't want to hear the president suggesting that you're likely to be shot by the police if you're carrying a gun. Very interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Remember, it's a free carry state as well.
Yeah.
If you needed more proof that Donald Trump is worried about all of this, then he's wheeled out the First Lady, Melania Trump, to send a message of calm. Have a listen.
I'm calling for unity. I know my husband, the president, had a great call yesterday with the governor and the mayor, and they're working together to make it peaceful and without riots. I'm against the violence, so please, if we protest in peace. And we need to unify in these times.
Mm-hmm. Well, Sonia, is that indicative, do you think, that the White House recognises that things have gone properly wrong in Minneapolis? And if so, what is he concerned about? Is it his poll numbers?
Well, I think it certainly marks a shift in tone, although I think people who've been protesting, watching that, will say, well, we have been protesting in peace. We've just been exercising our constitutional rights. And still, American citizens have been gunned down by ICE agents. So, there's a real question over what this shift in tone will actually achieve. But it is a shift in tone. I think it's the fact that it clearly hasn't gone down that well, I think. If you look at fine, hardcore Trump voters, well, they may not be that concerned about what's been unfolding. But there's certainly some evidence, I think, that swing voters, they don't like to see this. Americans place a lot of stock in their constitution and their constitutional freedoms. And it's not just former presidents, former Democratic presidents who've been coming out and condemning what's been going on in the strongest of terms. There are actually Republicans who are increasingly speaking out about it.
He's just talking about immigration. Let's have a listen then in Iowa.
On immigration by a lot, and the crime, they're leading by a real lot, by almost 20 points. And in real clear politics average net approval, the Republican Party is more than 10 points more popular than Democrats. And I don't even understand that. How can 10 points is considered a lot? But to me, how is it 10 points when we've done all these things? They've done only destroying our country. They would destroy. I'm telling you, if Kamala won, or any of them, I think Gavin Newsom is worse because, he's destroyed California. If they win, that group, that ideology wins, you will be Venezuela on steroids. And I've said it for years. And you know what? They will destroy our country. The country would have been destroyed already. We're fully rebuilding the U.S. military with more than $1 trillion we're spending on the military. And in June, we obliterated Iran's nuclear capacity in Operation Midnight Hammer. You saw that. People have been waiting for 22 years to do that, and we were right at the end. They were about a month away from having a nuclear weapon. We had to do it. And by the way, there's another beautiful armada floating beautifully toward Iran right now. So we'll see.
I think he was talking about Iran, was he? Can we just listen to that?
I hope they make a deal. They should have made a deal the first time they'd have a country. And just weeks ago, at a spectacular operation in Venezuela, we brought the outlaw dictator Nicolas Maduro to face American justice. In one of the most brilliant, lethal, quick, they've never seen violent operations ever seen, military operations ever seen. Nobody was killed, not on their side, a lot of people, unfortunately, I have to say a lot. We went into a very big, powerful military base with a group of unbelievable, talented, patriotic people that love our country. You couldn't hold them back. You know, the weather was off for 3 nights. It was not good, so I delayed it. The next night it was okay, but not great. I said, General, sir, they're ready to go, sir, they're okay. I said, but the weather's a little bad. I said, sir.
Yes, so mentioning Iran there, I hope they made a deal. They should have made a deal. Clearly that was a stark threat from him, wasn't it? Until he got distracted by Greenland. But let's go back to...
Or Iceland,
Iceland, he briefly, yes. Or the lump of ice is the other way of describing it too. But, I mean, really, he's looking at falling poll numbers, isn't he? What's happened with the immigration enforcement officials, has been a very difficult watch for people across America. We've seen the protests, the tears, speaking to our correspondent, Mark Stone, outside that rally in Iowa. This is not America. This is not democracy. This is not how we live.
It's been his worst week ever, I would say. He's touched new lows. But he staggers around all over the place. I mean, you heard that speech, wandering around. We were talking about Venezuela, where he said no one was killed. People were killed. Attempts to deconstruct Donald Trump's mind, his game plan, I think are futile. There's just a howling chaos in there.
And I see tonight one Republican US Senator calling for the Homeland Security Secretary, Kristi Noem, to lose her job. They came out, quite quickly, didn't they, after the video that we all watched over the weekend of the death of this Veterans ICU nurse, and suggested once again it was, domestic terrorism that people were witnessing. It has not gone down well.
No, because everyone's got eyes and they can watch that video and see for themselves what happened, and that this Alex Preeti, who was exercising his constitutional right to protest, and yes, he was carrying a weapon, but it had been taken from him and he wasn't pointing it at one of these federal ICE agents. So people can see what happened, and it is not going down well in large parts of the US. And as you said there, Anna, it's not just former Democratic presidents who are criticising Trump in the strongest of terms. There are actually Republicans coming out, and some of them have been very quiet, I think quite shamefully so, actually, as Trump has sort of, stomped all over the US Constitution. But it seems like some of them are coming out and saying things now. So the Republican gubernatorial candidate for Minnesota has come out and said he's not going to be the Republican candidate anymore because he can't support this. This is unconstitutional. Can't support what's going on in the state under the guise of sort of presidential authority. So, yes, I think Trump has miscalculated badly.
Yes, it makes the front page of the Financial Times. As you can see, the picture story. The news there is that this is outside a hotel housing Greg Bovino, who has been removed from his role as Commander-at-Large for the US Border Patrol. He's reportedly staying in Minneapolis, Minnesota. There were big protests outside that hotel. Bovino and some of his Immigration and Customs Enforcement agents were expected to leave the city where nurse Alex Pretty was shot dead. The dramatic front-page picture there for the Financial Times. More on the papers to come. Reaction to the latest Keir Starmer U-turn, this time on business rates for pubs and music venues. Back in a moment.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist.
A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan had the right to respond.
You're like, what?
A historic day here today. Congratulations, this is a huge moment. But what happens now?
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
They call him the king of the jungle.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Yusra Al-Baghir has this report.
And this is what's left of it.
As a woman of colour, how did the Harris campaign speak to you?
People risk their lives to speak to us for this report.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
We're trying to see as much as we can.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist? I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up. Big Sky News journalist. Ed Conway. Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us? Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office. Here it is. First off, just the scale of what we're looking at. Our data shows it's been happening. Question is, why it hasn't been stopped.
Now, the Chancellor was forced to act after pubs warned that her plans to remove COVID-era support would lead to widespread closures and the loss of thousands of jobs. So Rachel Reeves now says pubs will get 15% off their new business rates, with bills to then be frozen for 2 years. But not everyone is impressed. Our business and economics correspondent Paul Kelso has been looking at what impact the changes will have.
The hospitality industry and pubs in particular have been in revolt since the budget, because while the Chancellor did cut the tax rate for business rates, bills were still going up. How so? Well, 3 things have been going on with rates. The tax rate has indeed fallen, but the valuations of premises on which those rates are paid has gone up. Revaluations happen every 3 years. This is the first one since COVID, when prices were depressed, and pubs have seen valuations rise around 30% on average. At the same time, a 40% tax relief, also a pandemic measure, that ends this year, replaced by a cap that increases every year. That explains why rates could be going down, but pubs could still be paying more tax. So with the pub trade campaigning and Labour MPs being barred from their locals, the Chancellor has moved. She's cut 15% off this year's rates bill and frozen that bill for another 2 years for pubs and for music venues. Now, for small and medium-sized pubs, the move means they will pay the same or perhaps less than they do today. And for larger venues, it could halve the increase they were facing. And the move has been broadly welcomed by the industries. Hotels and restaurants are for now still facing those steep increases, but the Chancellor has promised to review the way hotels are valued. That raises the possibility they might yet get some direct support. All of this does raise some other questions. Why does the Treasury keep misreading the impact and public response to its measures? This climb down follows a similar reverse over the inheritance tax rate for farms. And given business rates raise £37 billion every year to fund local services like education, roads and social care, if businesses are paying less, someone else is going to have to be paying more.
The perpetual difficulty for the Treasury and their sums. But Matthew, the changes to the pubs, which was, first of all, that they were revalued and that the COVID support started to taper down, was on top of all sorts of other changes that have been brought in by this government, which was making that environment specifically difficult.
Yes, national insurance, for a start, and then the minimum wage for younger workers has been raised. A lot of younger workers work in pubs. So it all adds up to a sort of perfect storm for publicans. I was talking to the landlady of the Barley Mow in Bonsall in Derbyshire.
Good for you.
Colette, who's a formidable person. She said that if any Labour MP came into her pub, he would be clawing the carpet to get out before she'd finished with him.
Yeah, it shows the level of anger, doesn't it? I think John Craig told us it was 800 pubs in total that had barred their Labour MPs from entering. But this isn't that much, is it? I mean, some people are talking about their business rates doubling. 15% doesn't even touch the sides. I think the Mirror told us it was half measures.
Yeah, well, there's that issue. Does this go far enough in relation to pubs? But also the wider issue that hospitality is being hit more broadly. So it's restaurants and hotels. It raises all sorts of questions, as we were talking about earlier, about what constitutes a pub, what's the difference between a gastropub and a restaurant, kind of reminiscent about the debate about whether Jaffa cakes are biscuits or cakes. These things can have really significant consequences for your tax bill at the end of the year. So I think the government will be hoping, Rachel Reeves will be hoping, that this concession is enough to mollify Labour backbenchers, many of whom are absolutely up in arms about the prospect of local pubs closing. But there will be continuing pressure on the Chancellor from the rest of the hospitality industry, I think. And, you know, as Matthew was saying, this is a very low-margin industry that has been through a difficult time with COVID, but is a significant supplier of jobs, particularly entry-level jobs for young people. Young people might do them when they're students. They might do them as a first job after leaving school or graduating. We've got a lot of jobs in the service sector in this country. And, you know, this news of this U-turn comes at the same time as the pub chain Revolution Bars announces it's going to be closing 21 venues across the UK at a cost of 600 jobs. Now, the Chancellor is hoping that there aren't going to be more big chains following with that sort of announcement.
Yes, and they blamed, did they not, rising costs and falling footfall, particularly amongst younger people who simply can't afford to go. And also, COVID changed the way we drink. We drink at home now a bit more, don't we? We stay in, and we've seen inflation, which has just made going out for a bite to eat super expensive for people.
And for those interested in the difference between a pub licence and a restaurant licence, I've been looking into it. If you have a restaurant licence, people can't be standing up with a glass in their hand.
Right,
apparently.
interesting.
As long as they sit down.
Learning something new
Yes,
tonight, Matthew.
yeah.
Yeah, but it feels like the pasty tax, doesn't it? The
Yes,
difference between what is a restaurant and what is not
or
a
the,
restaurant.
you know, you have to order a Scotch egg during the pandemic in order to be able to order a drink.
Yeah,
Funny rules.
Here we go again, certainly. Should we take a look at the rest of the front pages then? We've talked about a few of them already. So the eye, first of all, on this very story that we're talking about, pubs U-turn to save Britain's locals from extinction, but no help, it says, for restaurants facing those April tax hikes. Usually a supporter, obviously, of Labour, the Mirror isn't happy with the U-turn, calling it half measures. The Daily Mail says the decision puts the final nail in the coffin of the high street. The Guardian carries accounts of the alleged murder of civilians amid widespread anti-government protests in Iran. The Financial Times hears that the Trump administration has told the Ukrainian government that an offer of security guarantees from the US is contingent on the Donbass region being surrendered to Russia. The Express understands the government's one-in, one-out migration deal with France has resulted in more migrants being allowed in to Britain versus those who've been sent back. An investigation by The Times has found that migrants are paying up to £20,000 for assistance in securing jobs that don't actually exist to try to dupe the Home Office with their visa applications. The Telegraph carries allegations that, as a barrister, Sir Keir Starmer led a case that resulted in British soldiers being pursued for war crimes. Downing Street disputes that characterisation, insisting he was not an advocate for either side. And The Star tells us about holiday packages to Benidorm themed around horse racing's Cheltenham Festival. Away at the races, their headline. So let's take a quick look then at the Telegraph. It's on China again. The suggestion from Sir Keir Starmer that we will be safer and richer with this cooperation. Him jetting off, of course, and arriving tomorrow in China.
Richer, definitely. Safer, not quite so sure. This whole thing is actually a kind of balance between riches and security. Every columnist in Fleet Street, as far as I can see, is opining now that he must strike a balance between security and prosperity. No one quite says where the balance should be or what it's going to be about.
Yes, the statement that was released at 10:30 this evening. For years, our approach to China has been dogged by inconsistency, blowing hot and cold from golden age to ice age. But like it or not, China matters to the UK. And The Guardian suggesting that he's realistic about the threat ahead of the trip on China. You'd expect him to be because of the long debate about what to do about the new Chinese embassy for London.
Absolutely, and it turns out the government is going to be approving plans for that mega embassy in London. But there's been a lot of criticism of those plans, particularly from national security experts, raising questions about where it is, what might be able to be achieved in this embassy, for example, in terms of spying or, digital interference, for example. So it has been a really, really controversial decision, and it's just revealing of how tricky it is in this new age, in this multipolar world that we're living in. China is a huge economy. It's growing. It can't really be ignored, particularly if you're leading a country that has a stagnant economy like the UK that's done itself a lot of harm through things like Brexit, for example. So you can't ignore China altogether. But at the same time, there are really important points that the Prime Minister will be needing to press with the Chinese leadership, including, for example, the treatment of human rights protesters, the imprisonment of, for example, protesters like Jimmy Lai. So it's not an easy game that Starmer has to play. And yes, Starmer is saying, well, we've blown hot and cold. The reason for that is world events. Things change quite quickly during the Conservative administration.
Does it matter that he's jetting off again, the never hear Keir, given that his rivals seem to be sniffing around? Let's go to the Times, shall we? I'm not dead yet. This is Angela Rayner. Yes. She eyes a return to Cabinet, or more, who knows. Aubrey Allegretti of This Paris, their chief political correspondent, writing that her allies have said she would have 80 MPs ready to back a leadership campaign and a considerable amount of money as well behind said campaign.
Yes, I expect she would have 80. And I'm quite certain that neither has she dropped her wish to be back in the cabinet, nor her ultimate wish to be leader of the Labour Party, and I would have thought she was in with a chance at the moment.
So Andy Burnham as well, coming out fighting today, suggesting he'd not been told he'd be blocked in advance, which was the suggestion with some. You know, potentially unions coming out strongly as well in support of him. We know a number of MPs have written letters saying it was the wrong decision. You know, is this all not going away? Would there be, or could there be, a challenge before the May elections, do you think?
It's absolutely not going away. I'm sceptical there will be a challenge before May, particularly now that Andy Burnham has been blocked from getting into Parliament. I mean, I think that's realistically where it might have come from. But of course the leadership speculation isn't going away. It's not just about Andy Burnham. As you said, you've got Angela Rayner, you've got Wes Streeting's, you know, allies who sort of talk to journalists. There are a lot of people who see the leadership as a big prize. And the reason for all this speculation is that Keir Starmer's personal ratings are absolutely down in the doldrums. He is deeply, deeply unpopular with voters just 18 months after winning that general election. And Labour MPs, rather, know that if they go into a general election with him when they could have had someone else, well, perhaps, just maybe, that will cost some of them their seats.
We managed to catch up with Andy Burnham today. Should we listen to what he had to say?
It is simply untrue to say that I was told that I would be blocked. So I can't say any more than that. I went through the whole weekend having conversations with people in Number 10, people in senior positions of the party, to discuss the pros and cons, and that's all I can say. It's simply untrue to say that there was a message given that I would definitely be blocked, because after all, the NEC is meant to be an independent body. So how could somebody say that it's definitely going to be blocked if they are an independent body? So it doesn't stack up what they are saying, and it is simply untrue, as I said.
Did try to explain why there is a presumption that if you are a sitting Metro Mayor, you would not be given the chance to fight to be an MP, because the rules changed 2 years ago, to outline that fact that it's kind of a waste of an election battle. It's too expensive.
Absolutely, and it's rather insulting to the people of Manchester as well. And I would have thought the argument for blocking him would be very strong, is actually very strong, were it not for the fact that Keir Starmer is so weak, and he is seen to be on the warpath for Keir Starmer's job, that everybody is going to talk about that rather than whether it actually would be a reasonable idea to stand down from Manchester halfway through.
We know why Sir Keir has been abroad a lot, because world events have been so extraordinary, including Ukraine. It's the lead story for the Financial Times. The suggestion that Washington has told Ukraine that security guarantees are based on the fact that they have to give up the Donbass, which clearly is the #1 priority for President Putin, who seems to not be backing down from that demand.
That's right. And actually, you know, everyone wants very different things out of any potential peace deal. And I think this is always the thing when President Trump says, oh, I've got a peace deal, there's often no detail attached. He hopes that he can just sort of bully people into some kind of broad level agreement, get it announced, tick, that's another step towards. A few weeks ago, the Nobel Peace Prize for him that we know that he was gunning for. But the big problem with Ukraine and Russia is that Russia and Ukraine are incredibly far apart on things like cessation of territory, on the kinds of peace guarantees and security guarantees that Ukraine want. You know, Russia is not down with having NATO troops, for example, as peacekeepers, as a security guarantee for Ukraine. So I think we are very, very far away from any agreement yet.
It kind of suits well, particularly the Americans. It suits Donald Trump that this whole dispute has descended into argy-bargy between America and Ukraine, meanwhile the Russians are sitting quietly, probably with their arms folded, never going to agree to any of this in the first place. But that has rather dropped out of the news.
Yes. The Guardian's choosing to lead on another global issue, that is Iran. And we heard President Trump talking earlier in Iowa. He actually suggested that another US armada was floating towards Iran. There is another beautiful armada floating beautifully towards Iran right now, suggesting he hopes Tehran makes a deal with Washington. I don't know what the another refers to there, because we know that US forces have been massing nearby, including flying in and out of Diego Garcia, part of the Chagos Islands issue, as we know. But The Guardian has picked up on reports of the totals could be above 30,000. You know, it's very difficult to verify the figures, obviously.
Just huge numbers, very difficult to verify, as you say, Anna. One of the reasons for that is a lack of independent journalists allowed in Iran to report. Another is that young people who've been protesting are reportedly too scared to go and turn up at hospital with injuries that they've sustained as a result of protest crackdowns by the authoritarian regime, because they're too scared about what will happen. I think probably very reasonably so, given what we know about young people being detained, locked up. We've seen young people being executed to be made an example of. So you've got some doctors in Iran, this is what's being reported of, sort of setting up kind of illicit, sort of under-the-radar hospitals or treatment centres, at least, where young people can come forward without it being official and receiving treatment. But, you know, we were talking about this in the last hour, just how extraordinary the bravery is, because young people are going out and, all people, but particularly young people, are going out and protesting an authoritarian regime when they know their lives are at stake, and that is true bravery.
I don't know what Donald Trump means by another armada. No. As you say, the troops have been massing for a long time. I don't know if he's just rambling or whether he's actually planning something. But if he is planning something, why do you make a public announcement that you're about to do it? It's all such a mess.
Keeps the pressure on if it's a man who wants to make deals, and he's already urged Tehran to make a deal, saying they should have made a deal originally. As you say, we'll wait and see what happens with that military build-up. Lots more still to come in the next part of our programme. We'll take a look at the insides of tomorrow's newspapers after this.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter?
We've done the work and the reading, so you don't have to.
Being a Sky News presenter.
Hello and welcome. Westminster, the heart of British politics.
I'm so sorry about what happened to you. So what on earth is going on?
It's not true.
Can I tell you what I think?
It's really unusual.
Mornings with Richard Frost. Let's crack on. Let's get started.
Well, we're continuing our look at tomorrow's newspapers, once again with Matthew Paris and Sonia Soda. And Matthew, let's go to the Daily Express, shall we? Yeah. Quelle total farce, they tell us in their best French, which is the one-in, one-out deal that revolves more coming in, which is no surprise, is it?
No, it's no surprise at all. Apparently, 350 asylum seekers arrived under the scheme, but only 281 were deported. I'm surprised they've managed 281. And anyway, the numbers are chicken feed compared with the numbers coming over in boats every day.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. The whole point of this was it's supposed to have a deterrent effect, and because you know you'll be returned to France, you don't try and make the crossing in the first place. I think if we'd struck a deal where it was literally return everyone who comes over, or at least 60% or something like that, that deterrent effect might be there. With a number as small as 300, it's not going to be. But to be fair, every government has really struggled with this issue because it is quite a wicked problem. What do you do to effectively stop people trying to cross the channel? No government has cracked it.
And we spent much of our programme talking about the ICE operations in America, the fact that migration across that Mexican border has drawn to zero, as Trump would claim. You know, does it take something strong-armed, aggressive, to stop a policy like this? Is that what the British voter will now be looking at, do you think?
No, and I don't think you should compare, really, Britain with America, with the United States. Mexicans and people coming from South America, a whole continent coming over an open or fairly open land border, or they were. I think the situation is actually quite controllable in Britain. And you said no government has cracked it. Actually, the last government was going to send them to Rwanda, and it might have worked.
Not many of them.
Not very many, and at great extent. I think it would have been the same thing. There just wouldn't have been a deterrent effect because they know that there was such a small proportion that would have been deported under the scheme.
You'd have had to send a lot of people to Rwanda for about 3 weeks, and then I think it would have dried up. But anyway, that's
It's gone, hasn't it, as a policy?
Yes.
In the meantime, what hasn't gone and is still on the table, apparently, is the Chagos deal. We've already talked about part of the military build-up we're seeing is in Diego Garcia, this really critical base, which is shared with America. Ministers are increasingly concerned that President Trump could pull the deal to hand sovereignty of the Chagos Islands to Mauritius over security concerns.
Yes, and he can pull the deal. An article in the Times pointed out something that I hadn't known. The 1960 agreement between Britain and the United States about Diego Garcia makes it clear that the Americans have to approve of what we do. And I suppose it had been thought that was not a problem because Donald Trump did seem to approve. Now he doesn't. Who knows what will happen?
And that would be extraordinarily embarrassing.
Yes.
Northern Ireland is to bring in graduated driving licence, first part of Britain to introduce graduated licences, or first part of the UK.
Yeah, and I have to say, I think this sounds quite good from a safety perspective, in the sense that once you pass your driving test, you will get... there will be a certain amount of time where you've got restrictions on night driving, restrictions on carrying passengers, and we know that accidents most likely to happen with younger drivers who've just passed their test, so not a bad thing.
Yes, and a final story I'm just going to show you is about Terry Pratchett, who had a rare form of dementia, early onset Alzheimer's, and they found that his range of words over his books diminished over time, which would have led to him being diagnosed with dementia 10 years earlier. It was called lexical diversity, started to diminish, which is a very interesting story also in the Times.
And don't we all know that as I get older, I struggle for words.
Yeah.
Words I know, but can't remember where they are.
Yeah, absolutely. And after a bad night's sleep, we're all like that, aren't we?
Yes.
Matthew, Sonia, thank you both very much indeed. Thank you. Now we will have all the sport next as England bounce back from Ashes disappointment with an ODI series win against Sri Lanka.
I'm Dominic Waghorn, Sky's International Affairs Editor, covering a world that seems to be unravelling.
It's not his country, it's ours.
Sky News, the full story first, free wherever you get your news. It's half an hour now past the deadline that Hamas issued, and we've now seen a third barrage of rockets coming in.
There's a fresh look to your news from 10 on Sky News.
It's a new show called The Wrap, every night of the week.
We'll still bring you the day's biggest stories,
but with more lively debate,
more in-depth commentary,
and more of what you need to know.
Plus a look at what's making tomorrow's headlines.
The Wrap.
Everything wrapped up for you from 10 on Sky News.
I witnessed the complete destruction of a place linked to my childhood memories.
This is insane.
I'm Yusra Al-Bagher, Sky's Africa correspondent based in Johannesburg, South Africa. I felt awe when we saw the mountain gorillas in Rwanda.
We call him the king of the jungle. This is the alpha silverback.
Sky News, get the full story first.
We're so used to seeing you with Rob. What's it like doing this kind of stuff when he's not here?
Yeah, I miss him. He just inspired me to be a better person. He's shown us what living looks like in the toughest and most difficult of circumstances.
I'm Greg Milam, and I'm Sky's Chief North of England correspondent.
He had a beautiful death. This is about a dying person's choice to die peacefully when they want to, on their terms.
Our app gives you the very best of Sky News wherever you are. Breaking news, videos and analysis.
Evidence of the crisis.
Podcasts, watching us live.
I'm live in Jerusalem.
Wherever you get your podcast.
All in one place and all at just the touch of a screen. The Sky News app. Get the full story first.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist.
A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan has the right to respond.
You're like, what?
Historic day here today.
Congratulations, this is a huge moment.
But what happens now?
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
They call him the king of the jungle.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Yusra Al-Bagher has this report.
And this is what's left of it.
As a woman of colour, how did the Harris campaign speak to you?
People risk their lives to speak to us for this report.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
We're trying to see as much as we can.
Well, it's time for the sport now. Let's head over to Sky Sports News and David.
United! Very good! Get in there, beauty! How will the lads?
As a youngster, Alan Shearer had one ambition: to play in the black and white stripes of Newcastle United. News of his signing was confirmed by Kevin Keegan on Newcastle's current tour of Thailand.
We have signed Alan Shearer. It's a world record fee that we've paid, and we're delighted.
Fantastic, absolutely fantastic.
Most important point is a Geordie. We want to save the press conference until we go back home to Newcastle, because the signing is for the people of Newcastle.
I've got no comment to make at this stage. I'll make it later on.
You must be pleased,
thank you. Delighted. Thank you.
It was just time to come back home because I'd left 10 years earlier to go down to Southampton as a 15-year-old. It wasn't as if Newcastle were struggling. They were a club that had just thrown away that 12-point lead in the race for the title. I just had to come back home. It was my dream to play for Newcastle and score goals at the Gallagher end, and I wanted my best years ahead of me.
His hometown club have been doing brisk business in copies of the shirt Shearer will wear.
525 for his name, but we don't know if he's number 9 yet or not, but that's the number people are getting. It'll be like 725 for his name and number.
Every Geordie, like a homing pigeon, wants to come home. Alan's come home, and I think it's great for the club. And it'd say to the kids in the area, we're going to give you a chance.
He's coming home! He's coming home! He's coming home! Shearer's coming home!
Newcastle United, that little team in the northeast of England, do you know? We're breaking records. We're giving people hope again. The football team has such an effect on our lives.
So, John, £15 million is an awful lot of money. Will you ever get it back?
It is an awful lot of money. I wish we'd paid less, but, you know, it's the marketplace. It's the business of football.
Shearer's move from Blackburn to Newcastle beats the previous record, the £13 million that AC Milan paid for Gianluigi Lentini, and it's almost double the previous British record of £8.5 million that Liverpool paid for Stan Collymore.
Worth 15 million?
Worth 20 million to me.
For the price of just one Alan Shearer, you could actually afford to buy yourself a brand new Tyne Bridge, arguably the ultimate dilemma for any Geordie.
Everybody had to put personal money in, but the brewery, Newcastle Brewers, the fans could never thank Newcastle Brewers enough for what they did to the club. They brought the sponsorship deals forward and put in, etc.
When you come to think of it, £15 million then was like this vast amount of money, a world record fee. I loved the pressure and the expectation that sort of went with that. I enjoyed it, you know. I enjoyed people looking at me, wanting or expecting or demanding that I go out and score goals.
For goodness sake, you're paying a world record fee for a centre forward, England's centre forward, and he's a Geordie.
David, thank you. Weather now.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean All Clear Skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors Sky News Weather.
So after Storm Chandra, tomorrow looks drier and calmer overall before more rain reaches the southwest on Thursday. Many places will have a dry and chilly start, icy stretches, some fog, a few blustery showers around Ireland, Northern Ireland and North East Scotland look most at risk of those showers through the morning.
All Clear Travel Insurance proudly sponsors Sky News Weather.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter?
We've done the work and the reading, so you don't have to.
Being a Sky News presenter.
Hello and welcome. Westminster, the heart of British politics.
I'm so sorry about what happened to you. So what on earth is going on?
It's not true.
Can I tell you what I think? It's really unusual. Mornings with Richard and Frost. Let's crack on. Let's get started.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist.
A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan had the right to respond.
You're like, what?
A historic day here today. Congratulations, this is a huge moment.
But what happens now?